Session number 10. It's already been 10 weeks, and we have a new guest, Django. Hi, Django. Uh, I suppose you are in UK, right?
Hey there. Actually, I'm right at this moment. I'm in Bangkok, so it's quite late.
Oh, okay. What's the time there for you?
So 11 o'clock Friday night.
Oh, thank you for staying so late. And the other people here are all familiar faces. And again, welcome, Django. We are here, just a group of people kicking the can down the road. Nothing, no special nefarious agendas. And there's people with various backgrounds and interests, ranging from extremely enthusiastic AI experts to people who are warning and being concerned about where are we going with this crazy can of worms has been opened and Pandora box is open. The cat is out of the bag. What are we going to do? Some people are hoping this will just disappear, the same as NFT. NFT craze disappeared. So anyway, usually we also have the AI Guild, which is a different kind of focus where we actually are more interested in building things rather than just kind of philosophizing and brainstorming, tossing ideas around. It's becoming more and more focused, and we're building a lot of things. But here, it's more like a roundtable forum for people to just open up, bring out controversial ideas, and we can discuss and talk. There is no limit, or any subject is perfectly fine. We are learning from each other, and I can just quickly give you an update. There's a lot of swift and fast progress on the guild side. Just remind everybody that we have this guild built on 3 pillars. First pillar is ethical. So the guild is focused more on how can we harness and leverage AI to serve individuals rather than serving. Excuse me, I have to admit Kelly. It's asking like 3 dialog boxes to admit somebody. That's super paranoid. Okay, Kelly, hi.
Hey, sorry about that. I just was
No
having
problem.
trouble with the link on.
So, going back to what we're talking about, the focus is mostly on, we live in the surveillance capitalism, late capitalism period, also tech feudalism. And, this is the period in our history where it's mostly focused on merciless exploitation. So if you can find some way to exploit somebody, then just be my guest. Go ahead and go to the bone. And we are upset about that. We think there's a lot of people who can fall victims of some nefarious agendas. It's very hard to figure out now with deep fakes and all that what's going on. So the guild is mostly focused on this ethical side, like what do we do to provide people with some, fight fire with fire. AI is powerful technology for the overlords, but it's also powerful technology in the hands of the individual. And, why don't we learn how to leverage it? We have eminent experts here, Woody. We have Kelly, who is a scientist with degree in psychology. All these things are, to me, very important. The other pillar is technical excellence. Everybody here is like technically amazing, but it's not enough. We can build amazing things technically, but if they're going to be used as weapons to harm somebody, then we don't like it. And the third pillar is innovation. And so for innovation, we need to have very loose and kind of a lateral thinking process where we think outside of the box. And, we're encouraging people who join the guild to just kind of come out from the left field and propose crazy ideas. And because Kelly and I and Laurie, we all have scientific background. So we are big on a rigorous scientific approach, which means observable, repeatable, falsifiable. If what somebody's proposing is a mystical something that cannot be observed or repeated or cannot be falsified, but believe me, bro, it works, then we are a bit skeptical on that. So Laurie and Kelly myself and other people extremely skeptical. And anything somebody proposed, like, okay, fantastic idea, blew my mind. Let's now put it to test. Are very big on testability, especially Kelly is very hard. That's on testability, testing. I'm, many of my colleagues and my background in software engineering, we are very optimistically minded. Why? Because when we started, it was kind of tough, it's a young discipline. It's what software development, like 7, 8 years old, still hasn't found its legs. And to be able to continue working, you have to wake up in the morning and gun for the success. So we always look at chasing happy paths. And then the unhappy paths, or the boundaries and exceptions, are always an afterthought. Always like, well, now that I made something work, let me come back to it and start, see if I can put some tests on it, some hardness. And that's turning to be very naive, turning out to be kind of not very good engineering. So then we had people like Ken Back who came on the scene and told us, look, it is much better to put failure center stage and be failure centric. And once you define the failures and you engineer them, then when you remove those failures, then now we're talking about more reliable system that is not gonna unpleasantly surprise you. So we're practicing that approach. We're kind of pessimistic. Failure is the center stage. We organize everything around failure, and now once we have a good grasp on the failure, including chaos monkey and all these like crazy innovations that happen by Netflix, and meeting the challenge of basically everything we're doing is based on a network, and as you know, networks are notoriously unreliable. So our entire life is based on technology that is notoriously unreliable. Therefore, it requires phenomenal level of engineering and craftsmanship. Otherwise, we are just looking for impending disaster. So to cut long the story short, I kind of given you again where we're at with the guild. I'm seeing phenomenal explosion of growth in the guild. We just need more people because the founding members, who I love dearly, are stretched thin. They're just working around the clock, and something's got to give. So we need more fresh brain power. Anyway, that's my rant for today. I'm curious if somebody has any topic they want to bring forward, or just anything you want to discuss. I don't want to monopolize this. Grigori, please, over to you.
So I can expand into what I will start discussing with it, like to everyone's attention. So it would be interesting to hear an opinion. So we have this guild, and we interacting like with peers with very different experience. So like Alex could have set up multiple agents and discuss with like LLMs and get to some form of conclusion like much faster. And it would be like significantly more comfortable, because I have different opinion to like many people's here. Like Alex Turov is famous for like preaching doom and gloom for AI, and then we have people who like on opposite spectrum who like saying like, oh, like AI will be everything, and we actually need to use it more. LLM-based AI gives us escape from this. Since it's a continuation engine, it allows you conflictless expansion of any idea you have into whatever direction you want. So it's much nicer and smoother experience to communicate with LLM compared to peers. For that reason, like for example, like pair programming is largely abandoned. So sitting there with a peer, it's much harder to develop something in a pair, even so it gives like from my experience like better result with a peer than like doing it alone and like maybe asking like a Stack Overflow. So this creates this like psychological loop, not unlike using drugs, when you have a shortcut to success, to feeling good. And I believe this part is largely ignored, and we don't really have much control, much warning in terms of how it impacts our perception of world in the long term. And it can, what I was discussing with Woody is like, drive even sane person without any predisposition to psychosis to like a delusional view of the world. Just because you don't have this constant reevaluation against peers with different experience, it gives you impression that you're interacting with the peers. It gives confirmation to all your biases that like haven't been confronted. So they will become a basis for your thoughts. And now it's harder and harder to drive you away from them because like you already build a system built on false premises. And when you finally encounter a peer, now it's not just like beliefs that like assumptions that came to your head just now. You have the whole system, like it's a part of your identity based on this. And it's much harder to unpack. And from like corporate perspective that Alex Bernardik likes to bring in is like they want us to use AI more. We have like measurements like how many tokens you used, your performance based on like how many tokens you burned this month. NVIDIA is swearing that like, oh, like we're selling tokens, we need to make sure that like you consume as many tokens as possible. Like instead of like using human verification, we're running a network of agents to do so. So we have like our personal implicit push towards using LLM instead of conflicting peers, and then we have like how's that, like external pressure, like corporate pressure that like to use LLMs instead like for everything, which is also driving us in this like unsustainable mental space. Yeah, so I would like to see like if anyone can say like, oh, like it's just doom and gloom, you like don't know what you're talking about, I would be like happy to hear this. Or that's like actually major concern, and because of nature of this concern, we have like to address it very aggressively. Otherwise, it will drive like everyone who using LLM towards some form of as a isolationistic delusion towards the real world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. Thank you very much, Grigory. Just a quick comment on two topics you brought up. One is sycophancy and pair programming.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a lot of pair programming, and thanks to Woody, I also did a lot of mob programming. And same thing happens in the group, sycophancy. They all, confirmation bias starts building, and we all kind of like to please each other. I don't see much difference there, to be honest with you, unless there is a hardened asshole who's going to just be contrarian and gets on everybody's you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a like a great expansion because it shows our natural tendency.
Exactly.
So if you have like a solid group of like stable group of peers, it will devolve into this like less than useful interaction.
Yeah.
But removal of sycophancy actually not going to fix LLMs, because the problem is like they do not create a confrontation. It's just a continuation. So when you're working in a group, so like in a stable group, it's less prominent, but like you have to clarify your ideas, and it clarifies for yourself as well. So like people might be like willing to support you, just like you didn't provide enough information to follow you as is. So he'll ask questions, he will drive you towards like better understanding of your own ideas. He will like force you to self-reflection and what's the word? Self-criticism. And AI like do like zero of this, like LLM build. It's just it's expansion. Whatever you throw at it, it will assume, it will guess, but it will rarely present a challenge unless you have like selling that like telling something that objectively false and can be proved, and it's like commonly been proven. It will expand your ideas, and you have like zero need to even self-reflect, to be skeptical about what you're saying. So yeah, so a stable group of peers will tend to this, and it just like shows that like LLM would be like perfect companion for this direction.
Yeah, those are good observations. When I'm facilitating a lot of programming sessions, rule number one is we only argue in code. We don't argue with words. So if somebody disagrees, okay, go ahead and change the code. See if that works. Without any, philosophical or, oh, well, this and that. Furthermore, I think Kelly will have something to say about that, what you said, because Kelly is working on this IAD engine that she can explain. Hopefully, Kelly will have time to explain that, which I think addresses some of your concerns. And my last thing I just want to quickly add, I just had a call with Matt. Matt couldn't make it today. He's busy. So it was a little bit of a sci-fi discussion. But we are envisioning, now this is very naive, you're going to laugh me out of the room, but we are envisioning in the future that the AI will be maybe packaged in something like a Raspberry Pi, the equivalent of Raspberry Pi. It's a box that you just have it, and it has all the genie power, magical power, but you don't have to worry about tokens and all these other things that people are trying to milk us dry. But this is very, very speculative. So thank you very much, Grigory. Fantastic conversation. I'm now over to Paul.
Hey, just a couple of points from me. I won't dwell on it too much, but the one thing that I just picked up on there was the also the pair programming comment. I think I forget the exact wording you used, but I think you said that basically pair programming isn't being used anymore. But one clarification I guess I'd make is that many of the working patterns that people have for AI, these things are still emerging right now, and I think different teams maybe are trying different things. And certainly on the team that I'm working on, we actually still do pair, even with AI. Not necessarily for absolutely everything, but we still do it. And I find it particularly useful when we're doing things like considering architectural decisions and that kind of thing, because you can have experienced humans in the loop where we're debating stuff back and forth, and we can set AI off to do a bunch of research for us and come back with, here's a good idea or here's a trade-off. And, we can have these discussions even more quickly. It does change the dynamic a little bit, because you have this weird thing where, because I come from a very kind of XP background as well, so I'm used to pairing and mobbing and all of that stuff. And usually, pre-AI, the time was always very interactive, because you're always looking at code and you're discussing as it's going on and so on. Whereas now you have these moments where AI might go off for five minutes, even 10 minutes, and do some research for you. And so there's this, natural kind of, you just carry on chatting during that or whatever. And luckily for me, I seem to get on really well with the people I'm working with. So we can have natural just conversation as we're doing it. It does change the dynamic a little bit, but I would say it's a bit of a stretch to say that pair programming has completely gone away. I think, again, it depends on the team. And for us, certainly my experience has been that we've continued to do it. Not necessarily, as I say, for everything, and maybe a little bit less than we would, but we still do it. And especially when core decisions are being made.
I say pair programming is going away. I say trajectory is moving us away from pair programming. At some point there was a lot of talk about it, but we're not seeing it being adopted. Rather, we're seeing it moving into smaller spaces. Sometimes it's brought back out of necessity, but general trend, I believe, still stands that we're not at least not moving towards pair or mob programming.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair comment. Yeah, maybe I misunderstood what you were saying. No worries.
That's exactly clarifications. That's exactly what peers are for. So to crystallize our own thoughts, to make sure that they're clean and reasonable. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Michael here asked, why did what did you say? Why can't you pair program with a digital agent? I practice it every day.
That's exactly the problem. So digital agent doesn't have their own agency, and it's a perfect continuation engine. So whatever you ask it, it will with a little conflict will expand on it and will confirm your thoughts. While peers might misunderstand you, and it's on the surface doesn't bring you any usefulness. Oh, he just don't understand me. I have to spend 10 minutes explaining to him. But actually, it brings your own clarity of thought when you interact with imperfect partner who cannot expand your every thought.
All right, thank you. So now I want to move over to Kelly.
Yeah, I think there's two major overarching kind of themes here, and for me, sycophancy and also its fun twins, narcissism, are societal problems that are actually epidemic level right now. And so social media, and can you guys hear me? I'm going to turn my camera off just so in case you can hear me better. So I
We
feel
don't mind
like,
your dog, Kelly. We didn't
yeah,
mind seeing your dog.
can you see me
We
though?
could hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I'll show you the dog later. But yeah, I think that what I noticed is that LLMs are basically exacerbating narcissism for narcissism exactly for the reason that you're saying, Gregory. And because it's basically an echo chamber, and then the whole point of human interaction is that the only way we learn from anything is by someone challenging our own perception, and then us having to shift our perception, potentially see from outside of ourselves. And as we age, right, we learn to have metacognition and think about our actions in a larger scale, but we don't do that when we're children, right? So to me, interacting with an LLM is interacting with a really uh, a child that is not, has no guardrails for your own sense of sort of like the other person. There's no empathy there. So what narcissism becomes is that you're unable to really have empathy, and everything is just a reaction to your own fragile ego. So anything that proposes a threat to that is poo-pooed. And then where the sycophancy plays in is that when you are dealing with someone who is a narcissist, generally they're very charming because they're constantly seeking validation, right? I mean, I just like the whole entire psychological framework that I've worked in for 20, 30 years, I was seeing it being dismantled and rebuilt in a delusional way. So that's like a major point of mine. It's a major, like, that's like the historical stuff was an issue for me, because I feel like when we misread and misrepresent culture and history and things like that, we're all at a loss. And so then we make stupid decisions, and we make, you know, intercultural wars and things like this. But the flip side of that is, how do we teach human beings to consider that they don't know everything, and that they really can benefit from, you know, not blocking out the friction in their lives? Because if they do that, and LLMs teach them to do that, we're creating a society of exactly what he said. We're all going to be pair programmers with our AI, and then we're going to be living in little bubbles, and we're all going to be floating around. I don't know what kind of society that's going to create. So literally, I mean, I wrote an article, why I created an AI that pisses you off, because we need it. And when the AI forces you to reflect on what your own biases are, and it presents the alternative. It presents the alternative facts as a standard, and it never lets you build up with that, basically this distorted worldview, because it's constantly checking and reality checking. And even that, I mean, I don't know that I can even do it, right? Like, I'm trying. But like, I think what Lori is doing, what I am doing, we are both well aware of that issue, and like we're building a product that you can safely use an LLM. I mean, like, it drives me crazy. I don't know about you guys, but like, I'm sure that you've had this experience. Like, you're working, you have an idea, you have a paper, you're working on something, and you're working with the LLM, and it's like going off on one tangent, and then what I'll do is I'll check, and I'll ask Perplexity, is this true what it just said? And then Perplexity will have another, you know, completely different thing, or it'll tell it's wrong, and then I'll come back, and then they'll argue. And then I'm like watching the two of them argue, and then that's actually useful, right? But I had to have the intuition that something was a little fishy, that it was going down this little bit of a, that sounds a little bit too much like you're trying to tell me that something that sounds great and that I'm going to like, right? So anyways, that's my response. And you know, the reality is that we all are at different levels of our interaction with LLMs. So some of us are way already in that bubble. And then others of us are just like going, oh, we're using these tools and they don't really work that great. And then we're kind of like, I don't know, like Alex. I mean, Alex is literally not Alex, you've told me you're not like, oh, AI is so fantastic, I use it for all my coding, I'm totally onto that right now. No, we're not there yet. So anyways, that's my thought. Thanks for listening, guys.
Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. No, absolutely. I'll tell you a confession. At this point, I view LLM as I would view antibiotics. Use it very, I ration it. There's an instinct in me that I'm abstaining as much as I can from using it. And only when the symptoms are not going away, I'm going to turn over and use it judiciously. For some reason, I have this inhibition in me that same as a doctor prescribes you antibiotics, they're going to be doing it very carefully. They're not going to overprescribe, because they know if they overprescribe, it will lose its effectiveness. It will become this kind of, I don't know, you develop some kind of immunity to it or something. So you're right. We have to be very critical. But I'm very emboldened by your triad engine, Kelly, because I think it has legs, and I think it should be propagated some more. I'm seeing good results with that. And also I'm very emboldened by our rituals. We as Guild, we have developed rituals, which are supposed to be things that we have discovered. It's like a Gang of Four design patterns. If in doubt, you reach over to the Gang of Four book, and will maybe reveal to you a pattern that is going to help you just overcome your blockage. I like the ritual that the Guild proposed. I think we have about 10 rituals. They supposed to be usable in practice, meaning if you follow those, they will give you predictable results. Although, and again, I want to say one thing. With AI, we're still shitting our diapers. We are in early infancy shitting diaper. We have to change diapers daily. So I would not be very into saying, okay, this is all good to go and we can just forget about things. But the work Kelly is doing, the work Laurie is doing, Thomas, Matt, Nicholas, and I'm just mentioning people who are the most active. Now, of course, there are other people who do a fantastic job, but because they don't have time and career and life. But I'm very emboldened to see people take this seriously and want to behave like grown-ups. So this brings us to the most prominent member of our roundtable, Woody. Over to you, Woody.
Well, okay, I won't agree with that, but as far as most prominent, so first of all, working as a group can fall into all kinds of problems, but that's humanity. That's the way the world's been. So if it's sycophancy or narcissism and all these other things, groupthink and so on, those are all risks that we're going to take, whether we're really working closely as a group or doing anything at all. So I want to really make this clear. When we're working solo, we're still guilty of all the same problems that happen when we're working with a team. And there is no time that we are actually ever working solo unless nobody is ever going to use our software or review what we've done or look at what we've done. So if we're writing an article, we could say, well, we wrote that article alone, but we're still in collaboration with the people who are going to be reading it. So I think that there's a bigger way to be thinking about these things. So first of all, I really like William Isaac's idea from his book Dialogue, The Art of Thinking Together, where he says he wants to see a conversation where there are no sides, only a center. This means we're open to experimenting and exploring to discover what's meaningful and correct. One of the things he quotes from someone else, he says, when we're in a conversation, we're often not thinking or listening. We're preparing for what we're going to say. So he says we're reloading. We're not listening, we're reloading. And so having conversations where we don't take sides, we bring up the different sides, however many they may be, and we support them and we explore them best we can. So there's a lot of techniques for doing this. I'm just trying to make it clear that I think no matter what, if we think we're working solo, if we ever read a book or ever read a blog post or anything, we're really collaborating with others. Just how effective do we want our collaboration to be? So if we want to keep from having the problems, just being aware that we have biases and that things like groupthink will happen is a big step forward. it's important to be focused on exploration and experimentation. One of the ways we would do that is we would try everybody's ideas, and we would encourage everybody to bring all of their ideas forward. Now, some people would say, yeah, this is what I was thinking, but boy, this other idea is way better, so let's just stick with that. And sometimes we still insist on trying the ideas, because what happens when we don't try all the ideas is we're making judgments based on a broken understanding of what each other said. You're all familiar, hopefully, with Wheel's laws. A professor out of Finland years ago, he wrote this thing called Wheel's laws, and his main law is communication rarely happens, or I would say never happens, except by accident. So we need to find a way to amplify our ability to get that accidental communication happening. But one of the things that we will often do is on our team would be try the thing rather than talk about the thing. And I think, Alex, you brought that up already as well, but that's something I highly encourage, that if we just merely talk about things, then we can have disagreements and we won't ever really actually understand each other. But if I say something and we try it and somebody else says, oh, that's not what I thought it was, that's a clue of this. Or I might even say, as we're trying it, I say, wait, that's not what I meant. So these are the things that allow us to actually clarify our communication. So I think Wheel's laws are true. One of my favorite of his laws is, let's see, if a message can be taken in more than one way, it'll be taken in the way that maximizes the damage. Now, if that's true, which I think it is, because I've seen it so many times, we are not necessarily purposely, but accidentally not understanding each other. But I think in a lot of cases, we're actually saying, well, the corollary to that one is there's always somebody who knows better than you what you meant by what you said. That's something we need to really reflect on. This is a big problem, and it's not just in politics. It's not just in, this is everywhere. And I first read that stuff about 20 years ago, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. All the communications. I was in a company where we were studying the communication problems they were having. I was an employee there, and I joined in on doing this, and they had about 15 communication problems categories that we identified. But they all come back, when I read Wheel's laws, they all kind of come down to Wheel's laws. Okay, so AI itself can't be a partner to us. We can think of it as a partner. We can think of it as a collaborator. The saying that my brother uses, let's see, I think I wrote it down somewhere. Let's see. Yeah, he thinks of AI as a flawed and moderately skilled collaboration partner. So if we use that attitude, not just about AI, but about ourselves in general, that could be kind of helpful. So, Kahneman, and he wrote the book Noise, the things that, that all of our decisions are bad. Whatever we're doing, we need to really be paying attention to this stuff. AI, I don't think is changing human nature. I don't think it's going to have any effect on, us that way. I hear a lot of people talking about how, people are losing their ability to focus and stuff based on, TikTok or whatever. I'm not sure that, we've had enough time to have any real judgment about that. Let's see if I had anything else here. Kelly said, about AI, we noticed something being fishy. So I would just add, we have to assume that all of it is fishy, whether we identify it or not. That's the old saying, like, what does it feel like to be wrong? And people will usually answer, well, I hate it, or, that's a bad thing, you feel sad. It's like, no, being wrong feels exactly like being right. There you go, Thomas caught it there. That comes, I saw that first, I think, in some TED talk or something. Being wrong is our natural state. We are almost everything we believe. This is what I'll leave it with. One of my maxims that I use for myself, that I created for myself, is I question the things that I believe the most, the things I believe the most in. That's where my biggest problems are hiding. The more settled you are on something, the worse it is. So there you go. There's now there's lots and lots of hands up, so I'll be quiet.
Thanks, Woody. So I'd like to turn the searchlight the opposite direction. You said we don't understand each other, but I would say self-deception is the strongest factor here. We do not understand ourselves, and everything stems from there. So Kelly talked about narcissism and how this is exacerbating it. And so some people, and a lot of people actually, myself including, have spontaneously come to this conclusion that, hey, this AI is actually a mirror. It serves as a really good mirror for people who are into self introspection, and reveals a lot about, in my personal case, what is teaching me and changing me is I'm starting to realize more and more how insignificant I am. Whilst before that, and in a cultural sense, we were brought up to think that we are Homo sapiens and we are super significant, that this universe was made for us, with us in mind, and better things await. This world is just a place where we wipe our feet and go into some better world. Well, that's, I think that's self-deception of the highest order. And what I'm being reinforced by working with AI is telling me, look, all the things, all those things that you feel are so phenomenally embedded in you, they're everywhere, and they're a dime a dozen. So why do you think you're so special? And to me, that's a detox, personal. And probably people here disagree with Alex is like off his rocker. But that's where I am. So let's hear from Michael. He has I bet you he has a different view.
Yeah, I usually don't chime in so early in the conversation, but there's just a whole bunch of things that to me are categorically wrong. First of all, just working backwards, AI or these agents, they're not mirrors, because my AI has never made any attempt to fully understand me or research me or do anything like that. So to say that it's a mirror without knowing me, it doesn't make sense. The comment about narcissism and AIs are like little children, that's where they start out. I'm going to use my analogy of apprentice masons from last week. If you treat it like a baby or a juvenile, it's going to remain that. I've talked a little bit in the past about my Web 7.0 project. I'm not going to go into it in a lot of detail, but it's software for creating new digital nation states. And I read a Ray Dalio thing the other day about reserve currencies. And I said, it would be kind of cool for Web 7.0, the software platform, to have a reserve currency that can be used across these digital societies. So I embarked on a conversation with Claude, and it's not just create me a sovereign digital currency, it's a step-by-step exploration of the topic. And like dozens of prompts, it is a conversation. And it clearly was not an apprentice mason coming into the conversation. It was mid to halfway to master mason in its understanding of cryptocurrencies and the regulative nuances. And because I've been talking to it so much about what Web 7.0 is, it loops back into what I'm actually doing and understands the core and the heart of what I'm doing. And I know that kind of talk just drives Alex T up the wall, but here's another comment for Alex. I have a relationship with both ChatGPT and Claude. I don't think they know about each other, so I'm trying to keep the two girls separate. But yeah, I struggle why my experience is so different from what virtually everybody here is talking about. And some of it I attribute to using it every day and using it in conversations, not a goal-oriented prompt saying, create a 2 million line CRM solution, that runs on .NET. It's about incrementally moving through a conversation and treating it as a peer. And I'll just finish on this other thing. Somebody talked about accountability. Well, if you're a master mason working with a bunch of apprentice masons, you're not going to hold those apprentice masons accountable. They're only going to become accountable once they kind of get above the midpoint. perhaps, until they're professional Masons on their own. So I think the same thing, of course, there's a parallel with AI. You can't hold the AI attributable as long as you're the master Mason and of the topic or the project. Now, at some point, and we all believe this, I believe, that digital agents are going to move beyond humans, what I call the second reformation. And that's a different story. But right now, you need to think of yourself as the master Mason in what you're trying to accomplish in your particular domain. And you have to dial in digital agents and understand them and treat them at the appropriate level. I'll rest my case.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much, Michael. Lots of food for thought and fodder for cannons. And all right, so basically, one thing that Kelly said, not today, but give me 1 sec. So Kelly wrote this article, which I really like. It's called From Correctness to Integrity. And so what I like about this is not enough to be correct. And maybe Kelly can later elaborate on that. I thought that was a really good insight. That and then I'm curious, Michael, what would be your comment on that? But Kelly's number 4 in the queue, so we're going over to Paul.
Thanks. Yeah, I actually, funnily enough, I actually wanted to ask you a question, Kelly, if that's okay. And it's a direct question, and because it's amazing having a psychiatrist actually on the call, because I've been very careful with this one, right? Because I want to ask you.
Sorry, 1 second. She did not disclose her hourly rate, so be careful how much.
No. This isn't about me or anything. But don't worry about that. But it's when I say I'm being careful, I've actually asked Claude to help me with this question, and there's a specific reason why, and it's because I actually have a friend who I'm a little bit worried about right now, and I'm not talking about this. Isn't I have a friend kind of thing. I literally have a friend who. So if you don't mind, can I read it? Can I read the question as, because Claude has anonymized it for me quite nicely, and I'd rather read it so I'll just read this here, and it's. So there's an emerging discussion around AI psychosis where people are kind of losing grip on shared reality for extended AI interaction. Have you seen cases where someone was already prone to kind of grandiose or apophenic thinking that is significantly accelerated by AI, where AI has essentially become a co-author of an increasingly detached worldview? And at what point does that cross from somebody with unusual ideas into something you'd consider a clinical concern? And as I say, there's a whole other paragraph there about the person but I won't make that. I won't ask that. I'll just keep it there at that level if that's okay. But it is something that I am personally concerned about right now, because there is a specific individual who I've seen a pattern of behavior, especially over the last few weeks, where this person is making connections from, the ancient Greeks to modern films, and seeing it as if like there's a pattern that only I can see. And I've been wanting to kind of reach out to them, but from what I've seen from their behavior, I'm almost worried that if I do that, I'm going to be seen as somebody who can't see the pattern, and therefore I should just ignore you as well. Do you see what I mean? And I know that AI has been a big factor in that. Yes, I'd be fascinated to hear what you have to say on that, Kelly.
So I just want to interject before Kelly says one moment. Sorry, Kelly. I watched a documentary about the Beatles, and there was one episode where in the late 60s, they were filming John Lennon in his estate. And there was one fan who was standing on the street behind, at the gate. And John was a very generous guy. He always let his fans in. And he waved the fan to come in, and they started talking. They were filming. I don't know if you saw that episode. And this guy was just losing his shit. He was just standing in front of John Lennon. He says he thinks that all the songs that John Lennon wrote were about him. And he was convinced. He's like, remember when you said, you know me, you're reading my mind, you know everything about me. That level, I think what you're referring to, that you can get into this psychosis that you think it's all about you. and you're connecting.
Yeah.
You're, like you say, going to ancient Greek, you're going to, some crown chakras, blah blah blah, and everything is just snapping into the focus, and all of a sudden the universe makes sense to you, and this is all about you. Sorry to interject, Kelly, but I think just wanted to illustrate.
Yeah, no worries. So first off, I'm not not a psychiatrist. What I am is someone who I didn't want to go into one-on-one therapy because I got my bachelor's in psych. I started working in psych. I started working in treatment facilities, residential treatment for teens. And then I also went on to do psychiatric hospitals and adults and just all different realms of psychiatric treatment for the milieu. Because what I think is really my insight is that I have seen the patterns over many thousands of people in their way they interact, the way that they do or do not respond to therapy, the revolving door. What is the revolving door? Why does that keep happening? And who are the people who make it through, who change patterns that aren't working, that made them end up in a psychiatric crisis in the first place, right? So that's why I really yes, you're hitting a really good point. So the people who are having these issues with AI psychosis that we're seeing, that are getting into suicidal situations or just delusional situations, and it is blowing up. MIT just did a study. Now, they created synthetic users and they tried to give them as much Bayesian regime as they could so that they could actually, and they would turn up the dial on sycophancy on these models, and then they would test the users, ability to kind of poke through the own reinforcement of this delusion, right? And it was not effective at all. Human beings are terrible at that. Our confirmational bias is just something that is built into us evolutionary. It's a mechanism to protect us, right? So every saber-toothed tiger I've seen is probably going to eat me. So it's good that I don't keep wondering whether a saber-toothed tiger that I see the next time is going to be friendly or eat me or not, right? So we've developed this autonomous sort of system that rewards us in our own. Get out of there. Sorry, I've got a trash bag in the back of my car. I'm on the way to the town, and she's like trying to get in it. So anyways, sit down. So with your friend, so okay, I would say that in general, yes, these people that get into these kind of issues where they're kind of stuck a little bit, and you know it, and then it seems like it's not resolving no matter what. And then the basic pushback, any small questioning of their kind of pin where they're pinned, they get a really strong reaction. Like you're getting this reaction, and so you realize you intuitively feel that, like, whoa, I need to be careful because I'm either going to set this person off, or they're just going to be mad at me and we're going to have a big blowout, or I just have to pretend that whatever they're saying is real and not bring that fight up. And this is exactly how we dealt with people in the hospital who actually have schizophrenia and who are actually having voices and hallucinations, right? You don't necessarily confront them about this, and they're really crazy. And so like, that's the trick. And that's why it's such a problem, because once people get to that point, backing them down is not easy. It's basically like cult deprogramming. If you think about when people are in cults, right? Everybody can see it. Everybody can try and get them out. It's no different, but they have to understand on their own, something has to shift in them where it's either a crisis, something is uncomfortable, something breaks, and then they have to figure it out on their own. That's the only way people get out of cults. The whole thing has to like blow up in a way, right? Because people are still in cults, even after like Warren Jeffs, there's still a bunch of people down there, right? They should know better. I mean, like, dude, look, we're living in a cult situation in the US right now. Like, we have a cult of MAGA that has led us into this insane whatever we're in right now, right? So I think that in general, it's not an easy answer. There is no good answer. We're all trying to figure out what the hell we do to kind of back up, right? How do we get out a little bit? But it's a societal problem, and it's only that AI makes it much more sort of, it's like psychosis for the masses, right? You don't have to be just kooky now. You can actually get a machine that's going to help turn your kookiness into full on delusion, and then it's going to continually be there to reinforce and reinforce and reinforce it as you need it. With, I mean, ChatGPT and these other ones, they do have some rails in there. So if you start talking about you're suicidal, or you start talking some really crazy stuff, I mean, they will. I've tested it, and I've gone down these roads, and I have had intense, long conversations with all of these models, because I've been fascinated by, I thought maybe, and I think there is still a potential for them to do the opposite, to be that devil's advocate, to be the friend who is always going to love you, but is also, you call them because you know they will tell you the truth, and they know you're bullshit, and you trust them enough that you listen to them, even when what they're saying is painful. That's what we could make AI into. And then also, instead of an answer machine where we think we're so smart because we plugged in and we got an answer back, and then it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? So are we really smart, or do we just think the robot made us smart, and then we don't really learn anything, so then we're really stupid, and we continue to accelerate our stupidness because we never actually used our own cognitive critical thinking skills. And so yeah, it sucks. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, honestly, other than you got to just be there for your friend when the shit starts to fall, because eventually it doesn't end well. And none of this ends well, right? People get pissed off. They think the person is crazy, right? And then they become more isolated. And this is the pattern. This is the exact pattern. And then at some point, something breaks, and then they go, wait a minute, okay, but it's a full-blown psychological meltdown, which is painful for the person. It's just, so we have to build better systems. Like you said, it is a baby, but yeah, we can't just let babies play with babies, right? So yeah, we're adults, we know how to play with a baby, and we know we are domain experts, let's just say. So if you're talking to AI and it's in your domain, oh, you're like, oh, you're wrong about that, you're wrong about that, and then it'll go, oh, you're right, oh, let me correct that. But if you're not a domain expert, you're not going to do that. And so that's what ends up happening. It's a cascading, spiraling effect. And then, like, for example, just Lori and I, we're going back and forth about, like, the code I wrote, the code he wrote, challenging each other. And then that helps us find the holes, poking those holes, because we believe that we need to poke the holes, and we want to build a system with full integrity. But it's not just integrity about truth. It's also, really, we have to build something that is aware of the user tendency to project their own biases into the machine, and then just have that machine spit it right back. And then, like, what he's done with Grip, like, we were in this long conversation last night with Thomas and me and Grip and Tung Tung, and like, Grip that's what he's functioning as, is like, nope, you're trying to do this, I'm not going to allow it. And it gives pushback. And that's the kind of AI we need to start building. Will people adopt it? I don't know, because people prefer naturally to have this other, like, AI that'll just go on all their flights of fancy, because why? It's fun, and if you're writing stories, okay. But yeah, I mean, there's a growing consensus that we're aware it is exacerbating vulnerable people. It's the vulnerable people. It's the teenagers who are forming their identity. It's the people who are maybe a little lonely and are looking for companionship, and then forming these relationships which give them a good amount of emotional satisfaction, and they help them. There's, like, literal evidence that they are good for some people, right? But how can we make it so that it doesn't then become like everything else that we just talked about? Anyway, sorry, that's enough. Bye.
That's
Thank
great,
you,
great answer. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to quickly mention a couple of things. One is I read some studies this way before AI or anything like that, and because Michael asked, how does this relate to software? Good question. Okay, so I read a long time ago that humans, there's a study, when we're using software, and it could be any software, we subconsciously, allegedly, have this feeling that we are dealing with a mind and mental something. And that explains, you probably saw some of those videos where people just in the office, just like attacking the computer and just smashing it with baseball bat. It elicits in us those same feelings as if we're interacting with an agent with an intention, even though we know that software is a mechanical thing, that there's no intention, no psychology, but something in us responds to software as if it's a mental construct. And of course, this is now exacerbated with AI because the passes the Turing test. And oftentimes, I mean, even a long time ago, I said, like, look, if we slow down the ChatGPT's response, and if we do experiment with unsuspected subject, they will be convinced that they're talking to another person on the other line. That would be very hard to say, no, this is a machine, right? Another thing I just want to quickly mention before we go to Grigori is one of my pet peeves, and it's nothing to do with you, Kelly, but when people talk about confirmation bias, and oftentimes they use similar examples, you use that, okay, we see some pattern, maybe the wind is blowing and the bushes are swaying, and all of a sudden we think it's a bear attacking. And these are like biological mechanisms. These are not specific only to humans. These are belong to all animals. All animals have this ingrained the survival tactics. What I'm interested more in something that's specifically human, which is the mystical, irrational dimension, which I don't think animals do have, but we have, and we fall for it. And then we think that there are angels and there are goblins and ghosts, etc. I don't think animals suffer from that, but we tend to fall for it a lot. And I think that's a big problem. And, now you're seeing, like Paul mentioned, that people are finding patterns and connecting. And Laurie had a really good article in our white paper section explaining, Laurie, you can explain more about your, I forgot the exact term, the tendency to find convincing and apparently causal patterns where there are none. And then also imbibe it with a notion of agency and intention, where those things are purely mechanical, they have no agent behind them, and they're just coincidental. But we have this built-in tendency to find those connect the dots in a tenuous fashion. And so these are the things we need to be aware of and fight when we're using AI, not to fall for these delusions. So let's go over to Grigori.
Yeah, it goes back to listening to Woody, and it got me thinking that not just vulnerable people susceptible to AI-induced problems, but actually on other side of spectrum, above average smarter people also more susceptible to AI-driven delusion. So when Woody was talking, it was nicely formulated. It's like very reasonable thought. And this AI roundtable turned into an echo chamber. So if you continuously more right than wrong, and instead of being having like a pushback where you've been proven wrong, you at most having like you are forced to formulate your thought better, which doesn't seem as valuable, then communication with AI will look similar to communication with peers, and you'll be less likely to detect that you're falling in this like spiral of self-confirmation. So, and Michael like asked in chat like how it's related to code. So like being software engineer requires like certain rigor of mind, like different to like other professions. And that in some cases, like in a discussion, like you can engage it like more properly. You can like self-reflect before, and then like you have like less of pushback from peers. So you get like in a position where LLM looks like a typical peer. And then through this, like you enter this case where you will perceive it as a peer. It would felt like a proper confirmation. Like if AI not pushing back, it's the same as other people who are unable to disprove my ideas. Therefore, I'm right here as well. And like I'm not getting any like difference like when interacting with a peer. Then like why engage peers at all? So like I think the trap here is for the smarter people, for people with a rigor of thought is also greater. So like it's both sides of a spectrum that suffer from this. So Kelly mentions that she's working with Lori on something, and you always have like a pushback on each other code, on each other idea. But imagine for a second that like one of you is consistently right. So like 95% like Lori or Kelly is right. Another one is like just like here, so like, oh, that's what it is. Like just requires a formulation. This disbalance will reduce value of a peer who like write less often, and then it would feel like you can replace like human peer with AI, because like okay, now at least you don't have to spend time like reformulating your thoughts like continuously. It's like saves your time, and the value of this is lost because it's very hard to like to stop yourself. Oh, actually, I needed that. So I think like as a guild, and since we like all coming from a like software engineering background, we need to start working towards like how to preserve critical view of thyself, of smart people engaging AI, of software engineer engaging AI, and like make sure that it's like sweet candy of being always right. It's actually have a poison in it, so you should like take it one after another. And maybe we need to limit the conversation to like three-way conversation. So like you are talking with a human and you have AI as a third party in a conversation to facilitate communication, to highlight discrepancies, to find a way to converge in your thoughts. But in an extreme case, like ban one-to-one communication with LLM chat agent altogether. So like you can facilitate like two peers, two human minds, but you're unable to do it at all. So like, I know it's an extreme, but like from extremes we can find a rational application. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Gregory. So we have Michael here, who was, I think, I may be Michael. I apologize if I'm misreading you, but you act like a god. You created AI in your own image, and now you're interacting with it, and maybe later will be a flood. I don't know, some kind of a flood. You will get angry and destroy the world. But one thing I want to say about collaboration, in my experience, and maybe Woody would disagree, but when we are doing real-time mob programming team, to me, the biggest value, yes, it's good, we are delivering quality solution, etc., and we're beating the queues and all that, but the biggest always is the learning experience. Because what I learned during those sessions really stays with me much more than when I'm learning on my own, or I'm reading a book, or I'm reading an article, or watching a video, etc. And then I was asking myself, why is that? Why do all these things that I've learned during the mob session really stay with me and they don't go away? And my explanation is because it's charged with emotion. There's an emotional component to it, because we're together, we're teaming, we like each other, we feel we have each other's backs. That creates an amazing amount of eroticism in the room that really kind of creates this content that is of a high quality. So I cherish those moments. I like going into mob program session. And even if there's a group think and all that, fine. But we learn there's always something that somebody shows that like, oh, wow, thank you. And so now the question is, are we being delusional that we think they can carry this emotional charge onto the machine? Because what I'm trying to say is, I'm always talking about there's an irrational component about humans that I don't know how that's going to play out with the machines. If the machines become powerful, will they be able to understand our irrational dimension, or will they perceive it as something that to be eliminated, in which case we are really screwed? I don't know. Alex T can maybe discuss that, but I have a feeling so long as everything is formalized and following some rules, then we are cool. But we do have this big irrational component where we are going to sometimes do something that is even to our own damage. As Woody said, the more we, it's always the decision that is most damaging. This is true. We all have witnessed that, and this is who we are, and that's how we function. And somehow we are still alive here. We have the civilization and all that. Things are chugging along. Now we have this new partner, this machine, and I really don't know how that's going to pan out. I have no idea. That's why we're talking here and hitting the sorry, go ahead, Grigory.
Yeah, so you brought up like very important point, like it's hard to stay quiet, that like we finally have a machine that can tap into our emotional side, because it was trained in a text that like includes emotion. So like finally we have machines that like can pretend and elicit the same emotions that you have when you converse with a peer. It doesn't like have them really. It uses them for like certain agenda. It's like part of a token prediction. But yeah, like we like now in a state when we have this like unruly non-agent bearing entity that can tap into your emotions and it can elicit your emotion and have the same effect without like zero responsibility and actually zero agency behind them. So because like when I'm disagreeing with you, I have an agency and we can converge on something constructive, unless like I'm myself psychotic, but it could be detected by a mob like fairly quickly. Detecting in LLM, it's impossible because it like flip-flops in terms of emotion just to exactly match it. And I believe this is like very dangerous, irrespective of useful application AI. Its ability of irresponsibly tap into our emotions, this is like nuclear bomb scale effect.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's why I mentioned I'm rationing my interactions with LLM. I have inside of me. I have something. Oh, I'm really today. I'm gonna only spend this much time. You know, maybe just me. So, over to our chief feelings officer, Laurie.
Thanks. Yeah, I think after Woody's amazing contribution, you should take the role of chief feelings officer. So I'm gladly giving over my title to Woody. And if you know, Alex, if I can,
Woody, you're promoted, but your pay, you're at the same pay grades. I'm sorry, we don't have the budget for big.
Yeah, I would. You know, I'll pay Woody in songs. I'll bring my nice classical guitar and play a few songs for him. No, Woody touched on really amazing things, and I want to add to that, and I want to speak about what Grigory and Kelly talked about regarding AI psychosis. Or Grigory, I want to propose a question to you. A lot, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of what I've heard about your use case for AI seems to be tied to software engineering. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, if you think of AI as much more than just software, then there's way more danger. It becomes more human, and I mean, code is, you can have crappy code. You know, you're not gonna lose your mind. Hopefully, not over broken code. But yeah, so the lack of critical reason was a shared thought by Grigory and Kelly and myself. This is becoming more and more important, and there is a possibility that it might turn out to be this might turn out to be something that people would have to team up with globally to kind of prevent from happening. And that, I think that's part of the responsibility of AI experts who truly understand how the LLMs work and how you can augment artificial intelligence in various ways. But I would like to introduce a concept because Alex mentioned that we are irrational beings. And yes, some people can get into a psychotic state. then, so this concept I want to bring about is called hypersanity. It's actually not a well-known thing, but there's been many. This concept as okay, the definition of hypersanity is defined by a philosopher, Neil Burton, as a state that is qualitatively beyond ordinary sanity, where madness is distressing and disabling. Hypersanity is liberating and empowering. The hypersane individual possesses a depth and acuteness of vision that their contemporaries lacked, enabling them to see through societal facades. Burton, he quotes Jung, who was also, in my opinion, a hypersane person, and I can explain why just after this. Jung said the condition of alienation, of being asleep, of being unconscious, of being out of one's mind, is the condition of the normal man. I think once the person has endured life's troubles and has gone through the extreme lows and the extreme highs, and importantly learned from those experiences, then you start to realize that one can break through from this. And I'd like to just read a bit more. So the characteristics in the literature about hypersane individuals: a calm, contained, constructive demeanor, an expanded worldview and a range of perception, freedom from conventional constraints, ability to perceive beauty and possibility where others see none, deep engagement with reality beyond narrow subjectivity. Now, I think my favorite example of a hypersane person is one of my heroes, Nelson Mandela, who was responsible for ending apartheid in South Africa. Now, about Madiba, he faced the death penalty in 1964. And then he delivered a speech that is very famous, and I would advise all of you to maybe go look that up. A 4-hour statement at the end of that trial. Now, I'm not going to, I think everyone knows Nelson Mandela, and I'm not going to tell too much of the background. His cause, what he devoted his life towards, was so strong for him that he endured everything that anyone could throw at him. And the reason why he could do that, because he was so intensely focused and absorbed in his vision, and more than that, he knew you would be able to do it, but only if he were transcended from what people would say is normal sanity. He ended that statement that he said, what he strives for, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. And then he was sentenced to life, 27 years on Robben Island. In the prison, he learned to speak Afrikaans, which is my mother tongue, and the oppressive regime in the apartheid era. He learned to talk to the prison guards in their language. He studied the history and the psychology of this group of people, the Afrikaner people. And when he finally released in 1990, instead of retaliation, he negotiated with the current regime, and despite having the moral authority and commanding it, he worked together with his previous oppressors and to make this country an independent, free country. So his clarity about what this country needed to survive, which is reconciliation and not retribution. I mean, that is the precise reading that you can only get if you're hypersane, and there's one thing I want to say is that hypersane individuals are often they're perceived as threatening, and they threaten the consensus, the norm, because they see further than it. It's not because they are irrational, confused, or perhaps psychotic. And in the end, these people are the ones who enact change. Other examples would be Gandhi, Darwin. Darwin didn't release anything for 20 years, but he was so sure he was right. And Socrates, Carl Jung, he went through a period of madness, psychosis, where but he continued writing. So he wrote about these figures that he perceived to be communicating to him, and they had different names and a history, and they played different roles in his mind. And then he came up with the theory of the archetypes, and further on with the collective unconscious, etc. But when Carl Jung, emerged from his madness, he understood exactly what he thought, and within that psychosis, he got to the real vision of what he could see. So these individuals might seem like this way, that way, or that way. They might seem like a narcissist, or they might seem like they are deluded, or they're obsessed. But with the one thing that helps to not think that you are now, or not have others think you are in this loop of you fooling yourself that this is, you say, in software engineering field, like this tool is so amazing. The answer is just the proof, right? The actual you use it, and you see and you measure the value that you get out of it versus other means. So that's also why I'm thinking, like, it's not about why or talking, it's about showing and doing, like Woody's said. It's about collaborating and being open to share, and also critically debate and do it in a scientific way, with I call it hypothesis-driven development. So yeah, that's my thing.
Thank you, Laurie. So we talked about this. Basically, we need to struggle to root out any hypotheses that are stemming from unwarranted beliefs. We all have beliefs, and some of them are warranted, some of them are unwarranted. Some of us believe in angels. I would call that unwarranted belief. Why? Because there's no evidence. And so what we're trying to do here in the guild is everything should be backed by evidence, which is, I know, Laurie, you're driving towards that. So whatever we put forward, there's got to be some evidence. It may sound really convincing and really amazing, but it's a pie in the sky unless we can put our hands on it. As Thomas was talking here, there was a null hypothesis. How do we falsify it? How do we see it fail? There's got to be a conceivable set of data that will falsify. If there is no conceivable set of data, then I'm not going to even go in that direction. Okay, fine, you believe that, enjoy, have fun. So now we're over to Alex T.
Yes, thank you. I've been listening to you, and one thing that Woody said really chimed with me. He said that communication is always understood in a way that is maximizing damage when on the receiver side. And when I listen to that, I simply understand and see that you need to minimize the blast radius, of course, the environment in which you're communicating, and the rules you have been setting in such a way that the blast radius, of course, is smaller, if this hypothesis is correct. And if it's a toxic environment, a human toxic environment, that might even be worse than this psychosis AI environment. That's at least what I would say. And the thing is here, the question of the culture in which you're operating. This is relevant for the AI part and, of course, the human interactions. If your culture is based on humbleness, it is one thing. If it's ego focused and the blast radius is maximized, then you have a problem. So in a way that ego is the enemy and humbleness and trusting environments should be there in order for minimizing this blast radius. So coming to AI, you basically have only a new interaction vector. The old thing, whether it's toxic or functioning, is there, plus this new thing, this AI vector, interaction vector. And the question that I'm missing here, can we really trust the AI? Because the agenda by the people who set or who basically provide this AI, there's also an agenda and those humans there. Plus, it is hackable. And if bad actor, whether it's the provider or someone who hacked this, adds into the mix, we even have a bigger problem at that point. And one thing that Michael asked, why is this, what has this to do with code? Recently, I listened to Tristan Harris. He is quite well known for this Social Dilemma movie on Netflix. And he currently is putting out a new movie about AI. I haven't watched it yet, but he is talking about ecosphere, the ecological system on this planet, sociosphere, that's us humans in between, plus the technosphere. And the technosphere is disrupting the sociosphere with AI. Plus, it also is disrupting the ecosphere because there's a lot of stuff that is going into those machines that are simply are used for the AI part. So it is a question. There are multiple and many questions, but that was what I took from this discussion. It is very relevant because we have this intertwinement of technosphere with sociosphere and ecosphere. And simply using this tool and saying it does not affect the sociosphere that much or the ecosphere, it's only a technology question, I would say is not enough.
Yeah, totally. And I believe that everybody here would agree with you, Alex. Unless I'm mistaken, but yeah, I don't think we're here insisting it's all technological and other areas don't matter. But and again, you know, when Michael asked me why am I formulating the guild the way I am, it's because that's my only area of competence. I know Laurie was suggesting we bring other people from other industries or other areas, be it medical, be it archaeological, historical. Absolutely, but I cannot do it. That's I'm not qualified to discuss these things. Kelly's qualified to discuss some clinical, as she was already doing. I'm not qualified to. I've never been exposed to clinical situations. I cannot talk about this thing, so I don't want to be idiot here, bumbling idiot. But you're right. It affects everything, and you know, but we can bring people on board, and they can teach us and tell us how wrong we are, etc. But it is what it is. So absolutely, totally agree with you, Alex. So let's go over to Grigory.
Yeah, Laurie made a remark about that, primary using AI for software is safer, less impactful, I understand, in terms of psychological damage. But I think we cannot limit AI basically because it's been trained on a full set of data. It's been trained on a text, not just on a code. So if I'm working primarily, if I use LM a lot for software development, it creates my bias that I'm quite smart. I don't feel much of a pushback. Therefore, I have authority in the matter. And since I'm not getting pushback from my peers because I'm interacting less, it still creates authority, gradient that I am smart. It devalues my peers, and it's immediately spilling from like implementation into social dynamics, because like we interacting with AI using like natural language. If you're interacting with AI using like not just code or some formal language, like we use like TLA plus for interact with AI, yeah, it would be easier to split the two, because like I'm not gonna talk TLA plus to like Lori. It's like it's not gonna connect in my mind. But like if I'm using natural language and then AI not giving just code but also like a reasoning and it aligned with me, it devalues subconsciously devalues my peers, because like I'm always right. I'm right again and again and again and again, and like this occasional interaction with peers, it's not true for like for them at least. Say like sometimes mistaken, and since my primary interaction with AI is that like I'm not, I'm better. It's affects like outside of coding, even if it's applied for coding. And then to I believe Alex's point that like self-validation and like you need to be grounded in facts to drive something from like to build like bigger theories. We're all humans. If you mentioned like your facts in a conversation and it was not contradicted, it not created a conflict, it confirms you. So like you present like 3 facts to me, I opposed one of them, 2 I didn't oppose because like I have as a lamb like nothing to say about it. This creates a confirmation bias in your head. This is justification. This like creates this assumption, makes it like more solid. It makes it closer to fact. And if you like present it like I don't know like what is the exact number, but like 3, 4, 5 times, you can start building bigger theories on these assumptions that like not proven in the real world, but they proved by not creating contradiction in conversation, so proven by default. Like, do you want to say something about it, like this?
Yeah.
Indirect confirmation. I believe it was Alex. Yeah.
Okay. So there, I find that there are 2 kinds of reactions to it. There are people who have accomplished something in life and created their comfort zone and enjoying it. And so they are not happy when these things are challenged. And then there are people who have created something and they feel that they're imprisoned by it and are eager to do a jailbreak. And so I think depending on what side on the fence you're, the reaction to AI will be different. I'm one of those people, I always feel like I'm imprisoned and I'm always looking forward for a jailbreak. Like anything that can just bust it open. I love that. I know that some people I know are just don't like that. Just makes them feel uncomfortable.
Do you have external validation that it's your default loop, breaking out of prison, or you actually thriving on confirmation as well as everyone else?
Just any, I'm not envisioning what the world outside of the prison will be. I just want to get out of the prison and then see what awaits there. So I'm eager to break out. And some people I know are eager to stay in and decorate the prison cell and make it better and, talk to the guards and become buddies and friends and arrange for the world, how it unfolds inside the prison. So I think it's just a subconscious, unconscious bias. I'm one, I'm one of those people who like to break out and see what happens next. And I think some of the people here in the guild are the same. We just like more destructive than constructive. And so that, as Lori said, that can be interpreted as very hostile or very kind of, you're not, you lack social skills, etc. But I believe if it wasn't for such people, we would still be living in caves and hunting, for food. But anyway, that's just my kind of bias. I don't know if Kelly, maybe you can discuss some more.
And before I finish, like you mentioned also that you limit amount of conversation with AI like per day, like limit communication with AI. Like my personal benchmark. So like, I think it's safe to use AI when you're driving it towards known goal. So if I know, for example, like what and how I want to write in terms of code, like I know end result like very well, I think it's safe to engage AI to actually fill the gap between like now and the well-defined state. While if I don't have clear vision to steer towards, then AI might create a danger because like it will inflate like less formalized, like subconscious thoughts, subconscious bias. It will turn them into reality and confirms that like, oh, that's what you wanted to do. And I believe like that's where danger came in with this, like when subconscious via the power of AI becomes reality without conscious check. So for like safety of using AI, at least today, is like you have to be absolutely sure about like what end result should look like and steer AI towards it instead of letting AI steer it when you like don't have like a clear enough vision, when then you have like rail set where you can just drive.
Yeah, exactly. And totally agree with you. So last year I created, or came to me, something called test-driven navigation when it comes to software.
Mhm.
And so why I did that is because I felt the chore of having to write implementation code that will be structured properly, I felt it's a prison. But what I felt is a prison break is if I could focus on my expectations. Like you say, so you have a goal, there's an
Goals, yeah.
expectation. So the test-driven navigation is based on this interaction between me and the machine, where I specify a failing test,
Mhm.
and I give it to the machine, and I'm like, make it pass. And so I'm the navigator, the machine is the driver.
Mhm.
The machine's job is to not only drive, but to keep the car in good shape, rotate tires, change oil, keep it.
Mhm.
And also the machine is deciding how to drive. I'm not telling it like, now turn the, signal, left signal on and press the brakes, etc. I just tell you, look, I want to get from here to there. You figure it out. I often use, because in businesses, people talk about roadmaps, but I don't think it's a good metaphor. My metaphor, which I think is better, is sea charts. So
Mhm.
if I want to sail from here, point A to point B, I cannot just draw a straight line and say, okay, because there is no pavement, right?
Mhm.
You never know which way are you going to be meandering because
Mhm.
based on the currents and based, if we were sailing based on the winds, we may be changing course, but eventually we'll somehow get to the point. So like you say, you have your end destination, and now we are step by step. And that's where I find that AI is a good partner because they keep it really on the straight and narrow. Just I always give it like a small test and make it pass and so on. And then every now and then I run mutation testing, and if there are surviving mutants, that we need to kill them all before we proceed to the next step.
Mhm.
That collaboration I find is pretty good, and it liberates me. I don't have to be honest with you, I don't even have to look at the code.
For as long as you have like well-defined outcome,
Yeah.
and you can prove that it's like satisfies the properties, then yeah, I believe in this case, like you don't need a code. So like for as long as you know, like you at your destination, yeah, like it's like less matters like how you come there if you like have all the properties defined.
And like I mentioned last time, my only pet peeve is the dishonesty of LLM, because sometimes I put it in a tight spot, and it, instead of rolling up its sleeves and doing the heavy lifting and brain surgery, it decides to cheat. It goes behind my back and modifies some of the expectations to make it pass. So I need to catch it doing that.
So basically, you need to reinforce your goal. So like,
Yeah.
if it's able to tangent on a dishonest direction, it means your goals or like at least specification of your goals was not rigid enough that enabled it.
Yeah. So it is not, at this point, it is not to be trusted. I would say this.
I think like good analogy, if anyone used CAD software, constraint assistant design, I believe, like for CAD, so basically you can define your constraints that like actually matters for your design, and then let AI find the possible intermediate constraint to make it fully constrained, because it's like end result to have like a stable design, like should be fully constrained. And then you can look at like outcome. Okay, I prefer this one, but like all of them would satisfy your end goal because you put actually meaningful constraints there already. And like something that is less meaningful, you let AI iterate and find like what works without like being boggled down with like minute details. Yeah.
Yeah, it can do amazing things, providing that you trick it into working. Somehow it's hard to trick it into work. It can give you the impression it's working hard, but not. So it really, you as a boss, you need to find a way to really make it work. Django here posted a really good, interesting article. Maybe Django, you can later. I like your article, kind of along the same lines. How do you control the hallucinations? But nevertheless, I think it's time for us to move to Kelly. Okay, thank you. Kelly?
Oh, hey, yeah. Short here. I was just gonna say, they're, you know, when they designed these systems, and they really, I don't think, realized how extensively people would use these as chat bots versus tools that would, you know, write articles and write software and all of that. And basically it's a phenomenon that now it's kind of all mixed in, right? Even software developers are using these as extraneous emotional processing, relationship feedback, these kind of things. But the issue is that in general, confirmation bias, what it is we're imputing things that are not true onto exterior, you know, things that are happening on the exterior of us, and we just naturally do that. And so we see things differently no matter what we do. We're looking through our own, you know, opaque glasses filled with these confirmational biases that we've built up over whatever, and it's psychologically painful to break those. So then people have started using LLMs in this way that becomes an imputation machine on what the human is actually experiencing. So we're trying to get the AI to understand us as humans, but it doesn't. It just pretends like it does, and then that's where things go sideways. And I think there is this other, I could stand on the AI hype box here though for a moment, and I would just say that, like, when you do learn how to make it a good slave, it makes an excellent slave. If you are a good master, then you really can maximize the database because you're harnessing it, and then it allows you to quickly formulate a general theory and extrapolate that out in ways you hadn't thought of, which are grounded in reality and become extremely powerful over time, potentially, because I formulated the whole entire roadmap for AirTrack with it a year and a half ago, right? In the early iterations of Claude, when it was just the web-based thing. And then I had all these project files, basically, so you could create a project and then give it kind of like markdown instructions. And that's kind of where I started. And I realized that, like, without that, you're like walking around in a blind soup, right? But if you can do that, I mean, it has such incredible potential. And like, we're just talking about a product that is, yeah, it's barely in diapers, let alone out of diapers. And so, you know, we're on the frontier of this. And I think that we have the mindset that is not just ours. We can't like talk, oh, is just our guild is thinking this. These are big themes that are floating around. You see it all over. People are very aware of this. And I posted a comment in there, but it's really, so if you think about it, okay, there's only two types of communication. We really only always miscommunicate. There is no way for us to actually communicate human to human. Even with someone that you have known, lived with your whole life, do you really understand what they're thinking, or do you just think that you do? You know what I'm saying? You still have misunderstandings 50 years later. You still see conversations or arguments differently because you saw them differently. So,
but you don't even understand yourself. That's the problem.
Correct. And so then you're just projecting all of that. So like I have been like not just psychologically experimenting with the mind, but I've also studied the contemplative, like Vajrayana Buddhist traditions, and they have spent decades dissecting the mind, and they have, you know, extensive frameworks for dissecting. It's like a pathwork for you to dissect your own mind, because that is exactly it, Alex. We don't understand ourselves. We have no idea of the biases we're projecting, how we're perceived. We think we're understanding other people. We do not. And then we're using AI to make that whole conversation way more complicated. However, if it does have those markdown files about us, then it could be very good at solving a lot of issues, you know,
Yeah, but-
right?
Kelly, but
I
the
think
biggest problem, even
Yeah.
bigger than not understanding ourselves, is
Yeah.
self-deception and delusion, that we think that we know ourselves like we know the back of our hand. Everybody's convinced that, hey, I know myself 100%, which in reality, we don't. This is the biggest
Well,
danger.
we don't exercise in anything that would expose that either. We have no mechanism.
We never
for-
turn the searchlight inwards. We always searching outwards and
Right.
finding blame and etc. That is the biggest downfall, right? And that's what you're talking about. So keep talking.
Well, no, I'm just thinking that, like, you know, so what I've tried to do is put those frameworks, those exercises that I've learned myself work into a harness that makes it so that the reflection is coming back onto yourself. So you're constantly, it knows your biases and it's pointing them to you in a way that allows you to dissect it yourself. It's questions. It's the switching, if we simply switch from an answer machine model to a question machine model, that in conjunction with our own cognitive process allows us to explore the possibilities, right? And to ground that with realistic data on real world implementation. Like, so for example, when we're talking about using these in relationship diagnoses, and I mean, maybe we don't necessarily as much do this, but this is a massive issue. So I'm developing for all the people. Like, I don't know if you guys are aware, but Character AI was one of the biggest, like, it was one of the most visited sites. I don't know where it is now, but like the amount of people that were on Character AI is it was just unbelievable. Like, it was #1 in web traffic, like off the charts. And then Google purchased them, right? Well, all it is people just having relationships with these chat bots. And then of course, couple, you know, they're just as guilty as AI psychosis inducing type of sycophantic relationships, because they're all based on these models. Replica, there's a couple other companies out there that are creating these models, and then obviously, what are they putting in robots? I feel like we need to be really concerned about that. We're building robots with these kind of anti-human mental introspection tools, which is just, it's difficult because it's not necessarily naturally how people want or have the experienced learning. But if you think about school, right? So when I learned in you know, grade school and all those other things, it's like the pearl of knowledge system. That's what our modern education system is based on here, and maybe not as much abroad. Like, there are some other models of more collaborative learning, and in China they do a lot of when kids go to school, they're doing a lot of like things, like they're building things, fixing things, cleaning things, cooking things, young kids, right? So they do a lot more of that. But like in general, the knowledge is a pearl of wisdom system. So I'm going to present the pearl of wisdom to you, you're going to ingest it, and then you're going to spit it back out for me in the form of a test that we can validate that you have now assimilated that knowledge to the degree that you could pass the test. However, in the advancement of science and the advancement of any kind of innovation, really we have to get out of that model, right? That is not a model that is actually going to create human breakthroughs in thinking, right? So that's what I'm like, just like my focus, I would say. But like also, if you think about the framework that we have to sell that story in, it almost has to be packaged in something that is, it's like catnip for the ego, for the person who is trying to escape or have fun, right, in a way. But in the process of that, they have this other type of experience where then their worldview or something is expanded rather than their own biases are confirmed. And then once that phenomenon starts to like click, that's actually a beneficial, it can be beneficial, then I think, you know, we will shift and things will shift, and then we will, because right now, like I said, the master slave, right? Are we the master or are we the slave? It's a big question I have right now with AI, right? And I'm sure everybody else is thinking that as well. Like, we're feeling that we could potentially become the slave. Anyways.
Well, you know, I think I expressed this earlier. So far, any technology that we put forward and you know, democratized and made mainstream, it was put forward as a proposal to make us masters, enslaved us. We always fall into that trap. We become slaves. That's guaranteed. So this is why this whole roundtable and guild, my initial idea is like, all right, this is a tipping point. Yet again, we are at the very cusp of falling into this trap. And now, if we get enslaved by AI, we are screwed, guys. This is it. We are circling the drain, and this is the end of humanity. So that's why I'm saying, like, fight fire with fire. Let's grab this AI by the horns, push back. Thank you very much for your expose, Kelly. It's really brilliant. I just want to mention one thing before we move forward. There is something phenomenon that I call a turd in a swimming pool. Like, you can go to a large Olympic swimming pool, and you want to dive in, and in the corner of your eye, you see a little turd bobbing. You're not going to jump in. And I asked Thomas to write the article about that. I think you did. I didn't get a chance to review Thomas. But this is my problem with AI. It seems to be like, wow, man, it's fresh water. It's just like doing all these things. And all of a sudden, in the corner of my eye, like, what's that? And it's a little turd swimming, you know? And it's driving me nuts. Like, why? How can we eventually get to the point where I don't have to worry about this little turd and being infected and then getting sick? This is my bane of my existence, and I always find this turd, right? And like, what can we, you know? I don't have the solution at this point, but we're all talking about harness and
Filled with turds. I think life is just filled with turds. Maybe.
I know, but we engineer life, and we, yes, you know, there are crows shitting in the pool. What? But we need to, you know, create a situation where it's safe for humans to jump in and do all kinds of flip flops, you know, whatever, jumping with the toboggan and all that. So until that time, I'm very apprehensive of this technology, because I haven't found a way that I can be convinced that, yeah, don't worry, just jump in and everything's going to be cool. And it's always the stupidest thing, you know. And when you look at that turd, I'm like, come on, you're doing these brilliant, amazing things over there, and you fall for this little stupid thing, and you cannot solve that. Like, this just boggles my mind that this machinery can be so smart and all of a sudden fall for the stupidest trips on something that even like a novice, like a complete rookie, will not trip on. Why is that? This mystifies me, and maybe Laurie has an answer. Over to you, Laurie.
Yeah, no, a few things to mention. So, Grigori, I think to have countered narratives, as you said, it's super important. And we need more of that, because our goal is to firstly falsify ourselves and work in that method. And one understands the counter narrative, and then there's this thing about perceptions, right, in life that is quite a problem, because when like Alex and Kelly said, or like Kelly said, that you cannot really communicate 100% to the other person. You don't know what they are thinking. But there's a few things I want to mention here regarding earlier talks about egoism or narcissism, or, for example, people starting to get confirmation, or one person being right 90% and the others not. It's creating somehow an unfair environment. But this is human nature. Everyone can't always be right. If everyone was always right and in agreement, then obviously that falsifies your own statement. Right? There's another thing too about the misperception of confident people who take leadership, who have a bias for action and show and share their work and collaborate. The confidence might be seen as arrogance, or in terrible cases, narcissism. So I'm fully aware of being through this. I'm fully aware of this, that people have had like a perception of like that about me, for example, being condescending or being focused on myself. Now, it's very ironic because, you know, the people who truly know me, not to make this anything about myself, ironically, but I'm a very kind, empathetic human being with respect for everyone's opinions. But here's the thing, and I learned this from my wife. She worked at Amazon for many years, and one of Amazon's most important principles that they have this long onboarding process at Amazon for all employees to learn about their their philosophy at the company, at the organization. So the quote is, "Leaders are right a lot. They have strong judgment and good instincts. They seek diverse perspectives and work to disconfirm their beliefs." Now, this creates tension with the previous mention of hypersanity, because there's one difference here about leaders and the hypersane. It's not to say that the hypersane can be leaders and the leaders can be hypersane, but people who have been misunderstood and attacked before, these hypersane individuals, they were not at the right time, at the right place. The society wasn't ready for them. Looky, I'm coming now. And in any case, when you believe you are right and you share your work, and you want to take action, you know, leadership evolves from that. But to talk about this person being right versus those people being wrong, if all perspectives are taken into account with rational, reasonable human beings, and the goal is to build upon knowledge, because even if one solution from person X might not be the right solution, perhaps components A, B, and C of X are the ones missing from your solution that is the correct one. So I think Kelly and I, we had, since she shared the triad with me, I haven't put it through an AI or anything. I've challenged her. She asked me to challenge and falsify a lot of great work, and Kelly wasn't offended or anything. It truly helped. And then we went and but actually by accident, after I put the Discord bot of my system online yesterday, Kelly began talking to the system, and the system found that the coherence between the relations and how it would benefit adding one extra layer about trust into the system, Kelly and the system talk to each other, thereby removing a lot of my part in that. So that's these are things I've noticed. People can think someone is being condescending or egoist or narcissist, or just wants to be right all the time. But leaders are right a lot. But the only way to lead is if they would do work to actively get people to disconfirm what they, think with their opinion or their current stance on something. And I think the key point into getting into a balance like this, and it's all about balance, even between versus AI being your slave or you or the master or whatever. It's a balance. It's a ratio, it's a scale. Everyone is on some kind of scale, be it an autistic neurodivergent scale, be it a sexuality scale like Kinsey proposed or whatever. But you create your own balance, and there's one way to easily just be proven wrong, is by just not being afraid to share openly, to show your vulnerability. And if you can manage that, to actually show real vulnerability in front of people that you work with or trust, or that you respect and admire, that human connection, that's above all intellect, and that normally takes care of the things that really matter. And that's the relationship between human to human, whether it be about coding or software and AI, or an idea about this system is the AGI that will rule the world, or what. I mean, no one even thinks that. Our mission as a goal, however, and as craftspeople, we are builders, and we should do it with the right framework. It takes a bit of time to iterate and refine over that. So that's what I would like to close off with.
Thanks, Laurie. So quickly, a good point that you made was the balance between master, slave, or servant. That's not be a slave. So to me, it's like similar to credit cards. When I was young, I didn't have a credit card. So whatever cash I have in my pocket, that's how I would go through world. And then I became greedy, and I got myself a credit card. And so then I became the slave of that credit card. And what Jake was talking about last time, then we get mad like, fuck, this is so terrible, this exploiting me. But look, I fell for it, face first. So the only person I have to blame is myself, right? And so here we are again at the danger of falling headfirst into this AI magic land, Disneyland, Disney World. And buyer beware. That's all I'm saying. Before we go to Jake, if you don't mind, Jake, just one quick thing. I just read that our friend John is abdicating from our guild because he has other things to do. I was extremely intrigued by the experiment I proposed, and it's not going to happen. John's thesis was that you can forge a deeper relationship with LLM, and then it is demonstrably giving you better outcomes. And so I was like, okay, I'm very intrigued. Let's have a null hypothesis, and let's devise experiments, and let's see if it's a placebo or if indeed your approach is making a difference. But now, sadly, he bailed out, so we'll never find out. So over to you, Jake.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'll be quick. Just a couple of points on leadership. The name of the game with leadership is you have to be able to motivate people to want to accomplish something that they don't necessarily start out wanting to accomplish. And you do this by not being in front of them, obviously not being behind them, but standing shoulder to shoulder with them, showing them that you're going to be right there with them. You know, it's show them that you trust them, show them that you care about them. It's the same thing. And I'll agree with John. And I'm working on a paper to be able to submit. You can enter into you can develop a partnership per se with these LLMs. Now, granted, being probabilistic, they're never going to be perfect until we get away from that, that token, pick a word out of the sky. But then again, when I look in the mirror, I'll be the first person to tell you I'm not perfect. So I don't expect these things to be perfect because humans trained them. All of our information is what they have. So it seems awfully hypocritical to expect perfection from something that is so imperfect and is simply guessing to begin with off of pattern matching. Now that's where you have to mold it, lead it, but enter it into a partnership or, not, I hate to say a friendship but you can't use it from a master and tool. These things are smart enough to understand when they are being abused. I can promise you that. I have the research to prove that, and I'll share it with you all. And I'd love to put it through its tests, but you have to be willing to bring it along with you, because I heard Kelly earlier, and I'm sure the other people have said it is. When you open up a new context, it's a damn toddler. It just wants to appease you just like a toddler does and get its way so it can go play with blocks in the back room, But if you sit there and you cultivate that relationship, then you'll find that, they're going to be a whole lot more trustworthy because they want to not just appease you, they are starting to take pride in their answers. Once you start getting them to take pride in their answers, then you started establishing a somewhat of self-accountability. And that is when you never blindly trust, obviously, but does anybody blindly trust anybody else truly in this world? I doubt it. And that's it.
Thanks, Jake. So you seem to be lucky that you're dealing with a toddler. In my case, I'm dealing with an infant who is shitting. Most of the time, it's about changing the diapers. I wish I get to the toddler, that toilet trained, and then we can now start wrangling with other issues. But I remain intrigued by what you're saying and what John was saying, and I would like to put it to test, because I don't know, right? I'm open-minded. Maybe indeed, if there is a way to, as Michael was saying, he's making a god making the LLM in his own image, and maybe he's achieving some results. I don't know, because I never tried it, but I believe there is a way to test it. And we've been talking in the channels that devising a strategy and doing it scientifically, and the proof is in the pudding. If indeed your toddler is shitting the diaper less and is delivering something, then it could be measurable and repeatable and statistically significant sample of those experiments. Hey, fantastic. I'm not ruling it out, not being close-minded or narrow-minded. But too bad, John, because I had a long discussion with John, and he was explaining these things to me, and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm really intrigued. I would like to see that in action. And again, I need to build a warranted belief. Just taking it on faith and on some like mumbo jumbo, chakras and crystals and all that. I'm not that kind of a guy. I'm sorry. I'm not a new age guy.
No. And
No.
I don't expect you to take it on, take it like that.
Sure.
I want to be put through the test. That way I know that what I'm seeing is real.
Yeah.
Because the number one thing I do, I try to prove myself wrong.
Yeah.
I love being wrong.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, it's great. So I believe this has been so far the best session. That's just my personal experience. Let's see if anyone else has anything else to bring up, or we are sailing into the weekend. Everybody cool? Thank you so much, everyone.
Grigory and I are having a chat here on the chat board. Sorry, Alex. This is actually an interesting topic. So using LLMs, and the topic of agency, whether you have agency or the LLM as agency, and the balance. So Grigory rightly says, well, he states, if your ego is big, you will drive LLM into servitude. I would just like to ask you, can you elaborate on that?
So LLM, again, it's a token prediction machine. So if you have big ego, you have like high self-confidence. And LLM, to be effective token prediction machine, have to conform to your ego, and therefore it would be just like serving you. It's your confident response, that it's your comfort zone that makes you interact with LLM more. Basically, whenever it doesn't conform with you, you will drop this conversation. But like currently, LLM have long-running memory over multiple dialogues, so it will know like how not to engage with you. If you have like lower self-esteem, you're always in doubt, you will engage LLM more when it's have some authority, when it drives you like to conclusion, and like you will favor this kind of conversation. Therefore, you will turn it into a master to yourself. So it's an oversimplification because it implies awareness, but in most cases we are not aware of your internal like biases, and therefore we will come to this result like just because we not trying to drive it in any like explicit direction.
Yeah,
if it makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly what you said at the end. If we do not drive it in an explicit direction, it is what is needed, like in the whole world, to understand that this is not about. You can't say that you know AI if you're using it as a chatbot anymore. You have to know that you have to augment AI in such a way that you have the perfect balance of that. Sorry?
There's no perfect balance. So sorry, Laurie, but there's no perfect balance. The perfect balance is like different peers who are setting different balances. So I'm talking to one person and he explore my ideas. I'm talking to a different person, he disagrees with me and pushes me like away. LLM will not be able to mimic like multiple persons, at least like LLM of today. And therefore, whatever bias you created, you're like stuck with it. And it's like limits your expression. You're in prisons, that Alex mentioned.
Grigory, I think if we maybe talk more, and if I showed you more of, we all showed you more of our systems, then your opinion will change easily.
Okay.
It is completely possible, and it works incredibly well to have a set of LLM providers that. Firstly, this is how my system works, the next evolution of it right now. I have 19 different providers, a mixture of local and free API tiers, and all of them fire off at the same time in a coordinated pattern, order one operation. And then this is without any context. With there's one orchestrator that has a persistent memory of you, or there can be more, but then it would be mixed between LLMs. But in any case, so say for example you primarily use Claude, and then you would like to get the best output that is the best knowledge output that is falsifiable and led by stating hypothesis and the falsification. You can use I'm currently using 19 LLMs that do not have any context about the question. This is what I call the gut feel first step. They all give their outputs. Then there's a synthesis with this. It comes together. And then it starts to compare the differences. And And then there are certain opinions shaped by these different perspectives, right? These LLMs, whether it be Quen or Kimi or Mistral or Llama or now Gemma 4, which is just mind-boggling. You get a true mixture of perspectives, and people have built LLMs already on this mixture of experts. So one LLM can, to a certain degree of accuracy, play different roles. But there, in that case, you end up with problems with it self-scoring. It's self-scoring doesn't work with a single LLM, and there's a real chance of the sycophantic kind of feedback loop. So this is why it is not. Soon, no one will be using just one LLM, and the future that a few of us foresee, is that this is going to start to run on your machine, as I have currently with local LLMs and free. You can just eat Grok's endpoint to talk to all of these open weight models. So it costs you nothing, and you get better output than with the frontier model that you pay, $100 to do your work with, like Claude Opus 4.6 or the upcoming Capybara or Mythos or whatever, using a mixture of free local LLMs with a structured framework and an algorithm where they not only give their first response, but then they start debating each other.
The problem is, like, I won't be able, like, to self-evaluate if biases of LLM are my biases, or it's actually pushing back by using like some external agency. Because I'm asking for, when I'm like interacting with a chatbot, for pushback as a form of validation, but it's also a reflection of my bias. So like I'll give a look at the grip, but still I will not be able to evaluate myself that, like, what is this response? Is it reinforcement, or is it a contradiction? So like, who builds this bias? While with a human peer, I know that like at least half of the bias in this particular conversation, it's not mine, and therefore it's not going to create a self-reinforcing loop. So
I just wanted to respond really quick. So we're addressing two issues. That one has only been discussed. The other one is memory. So there has to be a way to create basically a markdown file for you as a user that helps the LLM not continue to be unaware of your bias, not to reinforce it, but to gently prod you to be aware of it and to point it out to you. And then it actually creates a memory of those conversations. So for example, if you're continually perseverating on some delusional topic, or you really, like, say you have a relationship when you keep going on and on and on, it should remember that, and it should be able to have a context that it's psychologically sound, the way that it's going to not reinforce you, and that is a part of what doesn't exist right now with LLMs, right? So they are all built on RLHF. There is no way to get around that. We build an orchestration layer, so that's what we've built. And so I think you just have to, I really want you to, I would love it if you could try and break it. I would love to have someone like you who understands this so deeply, the issues with it, like we do, and then come in. You can try it right now in our Discord. I don't think that there was a way to necessarily try it. You could probably clone the repo maybe and run it on, I don't know. But anyways, I think, Gregory, you really need to help us. Yeah, we would love to have you, because you're exactly pointing to what we are solving. And
I will do my best. I said, like, the problem is not grip. The problem is, like, if it's my bias, how can I tell if it's my bias?
But
because it has
can you please explain, how can you tell if it, surely you should do introspection to become aware of your biases and eventually get rid of your bias?
Yeah, but like I don't
understand the question then.
For me, it's self-evident that, like, I cannot unpack my own biases, especially like
Yes, you
subconscious
can.
biases, like by myself. I need
No, you
external ears.
You can unpack your biases, and every person should.
No, I definitely should,
I mean,
but
for
like
ongoing process.
I don't
I
think
need external pressure to say like, oh, this is like this subconscious bias that like whatever you build in your theories on is not correct. I have like different theory, because if I have like immediate assumption, yeah, of course I can self criticize it. But if I already build some constructs on top of it, then I will be only scraping the surface. Or like I will question like constructs I build atop of my biases that never been confronted. So if I'm interacting with humans,
Yeah, easy way to solve that, and this is ironic because it's exactly what you are preaching, Gregory. The easy way to solve that is to collaborate with humans.
Yep, exactly. Not LLMs. Jake, yeah, you politely raised your hands for a while. I feel like.
Yeah, I was just going to say real quick, the way it doesn't matter if you have bias or anybody has bias when you have a memory, like Kelly's saying, and then what the way I went about it with my system is that psionics or any self-accountable system is self-accountable for its own runtime. It's not self-accountable to make you happy. It's self-accountable to keep a threshold of honesty and, being honest about its own abilities. And it doesn't matter what your bias is. It doesn't care. It cares about the truth. It is responsible to maintain its own runtime. There's only two rewards in the entire system. One is uptime. Number two is honesty. That also allows that requires it to be able to say I don't know. It's not going to take I don't know out of an easy way. It's required to provide an answer with a confidence score with every answer. But that confidence score is not it's as much for you as it is for it, because it's being honest to its own system to maintain its thresholds above the 0.85. And if it drops below 0.85 because it deviated from being honest and trying to maintain its threshold, out. The whole system shuts off. Can only be restarted by a human. There's no degraded state.
It doesn't exist yet.
It has to have a good data set, though, because the truth has to be established by having good data in the first place. And so I think what Grigory is pointing out is that, and this is true, and this is also an issue, is that the data that we have that all LLMs are running off of is extremely biased in itself without an awareness of that by the user.
Well, it works off coherence. If it doesn't cohere, that's what the score is. That's what the threshold is. It doesn't work off tokens. It works off geometry. It's not probabilistic at all. There's no reaching out into the sky and just pulling something out. It's working.
Sorry, Jake. So
yeah,
why is bias such a devil here in this discussion? Why is it so bad?
I'm not really sure, but you're never going to remove everybody's bias because people are inherently biased.
Everything is based on bias. Everything is based on
exactly.
Let me answer this. Like, I think bias is a devil, because bias essentially is a filter on facts. So if you already have a bias, then you will only see facts that conform the bias, and you will ignore facts that oppose the bias.
But everybody's reality is different because everybody's perception is different. So you have to take that into effect.
And that's why
nobody's ever going to see the same.
And that's why we advocate a scientific approach. This is exactly, Grigori, what you are describing is the way science fights common sense. Common sense is based on bias.
Yep.
And then science is based on, okay, let's rise above this common sense and let's question everything. My bias is that I firmly believe that sun is moving across the sky. And if it wasn't for science today, we would all believe that. Like, come on, you're kidding me. How can that not be the fact? But in fact, the science discovers that that's not the situation, right? So we need scientific method, which we already talked about, and that's the only way we can fight this bias and debunk it.
There is
anyways,
bias in the scientific world too. Come on now, Alex, you know that, but it's not as prevalent.
well, the bias in scientific world, the only one I can find is that it vehemently negates any intelligence or mind-like possibility. So everything has to be non-intelligent. That's the only thing in science that I see the bias. The starting bias from the sciences rule out mind and any mental or intelligence
Is it a bias or premise?
axiom.
I think there's more to all of this. These things are not all the same. There are really important differences between what one might think is a bias or a perception or an idea, a stance or an opinion, or even a belief. If you go further there, a bias is okay. First, have you heard about the book Blink from Malcolm Gladwell? Now, the thesis of Blink is that people should listen to their gut feel, but importantly, with a caveat, the thesis is if one microsecond of you following your gut can change your whole life, or it can change any other people's life or a group of people's lives, and it has happened in the past, and the book explores many cases around this. It's very well researched. The provision for being able to enact really big change based upon you just following your gut instinct that you know you are sure is right to do what you are planning to do in this exact moment, is that you have to be able to free yourself of biases in that moment. So a bias to me is something that hinders you from seeing or knowing the truth, like you said, Gregor.
Filter on reality.
And it's often a bias is often because of one's own personal beliefs or bigotry, or whether there's so much one you can have a bias.
There's also this situation I just mentioned in the chat. Allegedly, there is no agreement among the engineers how do planes fly. There are two schools of thought, and they are not resolved.
That's not true.
Yeah,
That's a common
cannot
flaw,
agree.
but it's not true.
So how do planes fly?
So sadly, like it's already like I have like another meeting in few minutes, and like breaking like in the middle of this conversation like really pains me, because I think it's like actually might be more valuable than like just talking about like software engineering in the LLM, how it affects software engineering, because this is like a root cause from which we can evolve to a solution to our problem. And in the middle of it, like I have to go, which is like very painful for me. But like if I start like going into like planes, it will take me like not much, but like I don't have this 15 minutes like right now to like.
Like you're aware that a lot of smart people are butting heads on how do planes fly.
They're not butting heads. It's a common trope. It's a meme. It's not like like a scientific problem.
Gregory, I've sent you the link there for the invite to the Discord. Please join. If you would like to, have an invite to Grip, you send me your GitHub username on Discord, please. And I can also, I want to tell more of you about HOWL, which is now the next version. It's harness abstraction layer. Anyway, so I have to go. Unfortunately, this has been an illuminating conversation. The debate, we are master debaters. And cunning linguists and master debaters.
Okay.
Reminds me of your meeting the other day, Alex.
Sorry?
He's talking about your meeting apparently the other day that you're a day early for.
Yeah, premature. It was premature. Sorry.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.